Hi guys, I wanted to do a quick recording and recap of tonight's meeting. It was just fire, and I wanted to share some thoughts that I learned as well as that we discussed. And we started off with some reflection questions of the month. I love to take time near the end of every month to go through some of these things, think about the month, and then as we head into this last month of the year, how are we going to make it strong and end with a bang? It kind of hits you like, oh, this is the last month of the year. So I would invite you to take some of these questions to heart, take some time to reflect through each of these. Okay. The number one thing is, what was the most memorable part of this last month? Describe it. Pause. So the most memorable part, and describe, where you were, who you were with, why it was memorable. A couple of the participants said, okay, this was memorable. It wasn't the most, positive experience, but, something positive came of it. So don't feel like it has to be like necessarily positive or negative, but just the most memorable and why. Number two is the three biggest lessons that you learned. Maybe it's just one lesson, but what did you really learn from this month? And then number three is, what did you accomplish? What are you most proud of? We were talking about setting boundaries, and sometimes that can be hard, especially with the people that we love, but we find it so necessary for our own safety and well-being, for us to be able to thrive and to be able to in turn help and serve others. We need to create those necessary boundaries, and the more that we can do that, the more that we can realize that we're capable of doing it and continue to create those boundaries. Boundaries really are such a necessity. The next question is, how are you different between last month and this month? I guarantee, and even in just the tiniest bit, you are different. You are better. You have grown. So kind of goes off of that last question of, what are you most accomplished? What are you most proud of? What did you accomplish? But how are you different between, October and November? Two more questions for you. The next one is, who or what are you especially grateful for? I hope that when you answer this, you can just do a nice free flow, whoever, whatever comes to mind, pause and answer. And then the last question would be, um, I want you to look at your priorities from last month. How did you spend your time? What did you do? Were you happy with the way that you spent your time? If you need to course correct, please do. Say, okay, I spent a lot of time doing this. Maybe I need to take away and, allocate more time toward this, switch this so I make this a priority. I want you all to be thinking, everything in your day and all that your time and energy you're spending is making sense for where you want to be. So you can make these little tweaks, even if it's tweaking a couple things can make a huge difference, taking away, adding in. So just look at your priorities and see how you can adjust going forward this next month. And this is a plug for, if you feel like, okay, this isn't happening and I don't know how to make it happen, please reach out, because we can talk through some of those action steps to help make it possible for you. And I am, again, always here to help you be accountable in that. So don't feel shy about reaching out. And then I will leave you with our thought we had today. And and I want to share an idea that Kendall taught us tonight. And I will have her link in the webinar, because it sounded like super, super interesting, this idea of codependency and how we think, or at least we thought in our brain, being codependent is like, oh, just a couple that's clingy, maybe more in a romantic sense. But this idea of codependence, how we have one aspect of us or ourselves that has the that is the attachment, right? Like we as humans long for that connection, that attachment. Like we need to feel connected. That is like a basic need. So there's the attachment part, and then there's also the authentic part, the authenticity. And sometimes we can sacrifice that authentic part of ourselves in order to have that connection. So just being aware of that and really exploring this idea of codependency and making appropriate boundaries to have both, to have an appropriate connection that serves our authentic selves. Kendall can explain it much better, I know, but if she can share kind of that lesson with us, that would be amazing. And then I would leave you with this last bit that we talked about, kind of the theme of December, okay? And that is, how do we receive more light? How do we receive the light? Let me preface by saying I've been thinking about how beautiful it is to see these Christmas lights at this time of year. But you know when they shine brightest is when it's very, very dark. Okay, when that pitch black, you can see the beauty of the light, and just what a joy that is, driving down the, the road, dark and, late at night, but then to see these beautiful lights surrounding us. So how do we receive more of the light into our lives? And receive is an action word, right? Receive. And so how do we make room to receive more light into our hearts? There are 3 things I want you to take away from this. Number 1 is a daily seeking and asking. So seeking, and I really believe that, think of us ourselves as lamps, right? And we have to have oil burning constantly in order to burn bright. And we can't just fill it occasionally or, once per week, but it's that filling, that replenishing of the oil in order to burn bright. And if you pray to God, doing that as well, just that constant, spiritual, physical, and mental nourishment so that you can burn bright. And asking, being in a place that you just being open and asking, and really, having that desire, making sure that desire is there. So number 1, seek and ask. Number 2 is allowing. Are our hearts open to receiving the light? Are we really open, or is there something holding us back? Do we feel scared or nervous to actually really let it in? Or are we cluttered in our minds? Can we make the space and allow the light to come in? And how can we do that? We talked about how that's like, that's its own little topic. So maybe we'll continue with that one. But number 3 is doing and not delaying, making the time to do. Okay. We also talked about allowing, just to piggyback just a little bit on the idea of allowing, is that, these moments, these glimpses of like inspiration and epiphanies are going to come in the still, small, quiet moments. When I receive inspiration, it's not loudly like a flashing light switch moment. I think it can be difficult in today's world because it's very, we have instant gratification. We have like on and off. We can Google something, we have the answer. So sometimes receiving those answers and inspiration, it's not as quick as we would hope for. But I like to think of the difference between, a light switch and a sunrise. It's going to be a process, and it's going to take time and patience and effort on our part. And so just knowing that, right? in this allowing process. But with that, we can still have the ability to do and don't delay. We talked about how important it is to follow those little nudges that maybe don't make sense, but they do after you choose to follow or choose not to follow. I shared an example of my mom where she had a just impression to go home somewhere before she went, out with her friends. And she thought, no, this is dumb. Why would I go home? Because I need to get to this event. I'm going to be late. It didn't make sense logically, but she kept getting this impression to go home. And when she did, she found that her oven was on. And so potentially saved her house. Right? So things like that, little nudges. And I want you to think back on an impression where maybe you did have a feeling to do something, and now you appreciate why. So just taking the action and not delaying. So those 3 steps again were seek and ask, allow the light to come in. And number 3, delay, don't delay. Okay. And I hope that you feel this continuous love through the turmoil, through the dark. Just know that that is necessary to see this bright light, and that we can feel this love constantly, no matter what turmoil is happening in or and around us. That we are burning so brightly, and we have that knowledge and love in our hearts burning, that we can feel peace at all times. And just knowing that, having the faith and trust that all will be well. All will be well. Like, just if you can have that, all will be well. I think that's going to be the theme of this week. All will be well. And so just lift up your hearts and shine your light. I want you to think how you can burn your light to be brighter, and also see the light in others and help pull that out as well. So hope you enjoyed that recap. I was super sad when I found that it was not recording, but I thought I'd do a little recap, and hope you all have a wonderful week, and we will talk to you soon.